Mazie Egbuna struck his stick on the ground, it would release the curse. The young men returning from the city would suddenly face terrible misfortune. Their businesses would fail, they would lose their money, and they would be unable to leave the village to return to the city. With this newfound power, Mazie Egbuna became even more bitter and cruel. Whenever a young man arrived from the city, Mazie Egbuna would wait for the perfect moment. As soon as he heard the laughter and the excitement that followed the city visitors, he would hit his stick on the ground. The young men, full of hopes and dreams, would suddenly find themselves in a deep trouble. Some lost their jobs, others became sick, and even fell into such debt they couldn't afford to travel back to the city. The curse kept them trapped in the village. The villagers noticed the strange things were happening, but they didn't know who was behind it. They began to gossip, whispering about evil spirits and bad luck. Some said the village was cursed, while others believed the gods were angry. The confusion grew as more young men found themselves ruined. One of the victims was Mazie Egbuna's curse was a young man named Chike. He returned from the city. Once upon a time, in a small, peaceful village in Africa, there lived an old man named Mazie Egbuna. He was known for his hunched back, deep wrinkles, and more importantly, his crooked leg. He moved about with a walking stick, and when people saw him hobbling slowly down in the village path, they would whisper among themselves,
"Here comes Mazie Egbuna."
Yes, he's coming, oh.
They would say,
"Chai, poor old man with no wife or children to care for him. Yeah."
Mazie Egbuna's life had not been kind to him. He lived in a small, broken-down hut at the edge of the village, where he spent his days alone. His bad leg had always made it difficult for him to walk or find a wife, while others married, had children, and found joy in their family. Mazie Egbuna has grown old and bitter. His soul was filled with anger, and he carried a deep hatred for the happy and prosperous people around him. So one day, Mazie Egbuna made a terrible decision. He thought out a powerful medicine man who lived deep in the forest. The medicine man was fearful for his dark magic, but Mazie Egbuna was desperate. He wanted power, and he wanted to make the young men who returned to the village from the city to suffer as he had suffered.
"I want to curse those who come back from the city with their money and their fine clothes."
Mazie Egbuna said to the medicine man, his voice full of hatred,
"I want to ruin their lives the way mine was ruined."
The medicine man, who knew of Mazie Egbuna's bitterness, nodded slowly.
"I will give you what you want.
He said,
But know this, evil always returns to its owner."
Mazie Egbuna didn't care about the warning. The medicine man handed him a charm, a small piece of evil that Mazie Egbuna hid inside his walking stick. Whenever Mazie Egbuna struck his stick on the ground, it would release the curse. The young men returning from the city would suddenly face terrible misfortune. Their businesses would fail, they would lose their money, and they would be unable to leave the village to return to the city. With this newfound power, Mazie Egbuna became even more bitter and cruel. Whenever a young man arrived from the city, Mazie Egbuna would wait for the perfect moment. As soon as he heard the laughter and the excitement that followed the city visitors, he would hit his stick on the ground. The young men, full of hopes and dreams, would suddenly find themselves in a deep trouble. Some lost their jobs, others became sick, and they even fell into such debt they couldn't afford to travel back to the city. The curse kept them trapped in the village. The villagers noticed the strange things were happening, but they didn't know who was behind it. They began to gossip, whispering about evil spirits and bad luck. Some said the village was cursed, while others believed the gods were angry. The confusion grew as more young men found themselves ruined. One of the victims was Mazie Egbuna's curse was a young man named Chike. He returned from the city to visit his family with the plans of starting a business in the village. Chike was a kind-hearted man, always helping others and loved by many. But after Mazie Egbuna hit his stick on the ground, Chike's life started to fall apart. His money disappeared, his business plan failed, and soon he found himself stuck in the village with no way out. Chike's situation caused a lot of pain for his family. The village elders were concerned. They couldn't understand why so many young men were suddenly facing hardship after returning home. Amidst all this chaos lived a young girl named Nneka. She was known for her gentle heart and kindness. She often went into the forest to gather firewood. And one day, while doing so, she saw Mazie Egbuna's walking stick lying on the ground near the bushes. Mazie Egbuna has gone to the village meeting earlier that day, and on his way home, he had stopped to relieve himself in the bush because of a sudden stomach upset. In his rush, he had left the stick behind, not realizing what he has done. Nneka, thinking the stick was just an ordinary piece of wood, picked it up and took it home. She planned to use it to stir the fire for cooking late that evening. That night, as Nneka placed the stick in the fire to prepare her meal, something strange began to happen. In his small heart, Mazie Egbuna felt a sharp pain in his chest. His body felt like it was on fire. He screamed in annoying, crunching the chest, and fell on the floor.
Fire! Fire! Help me! I'm burning!
He cried. The villagers heard his screams and rushed to his hut. When they arrived, they found Mazie Egbuna rotting on the floor, his face twisted in pain.
Chimo, is the stick? This stick is burning. Is the stick? Help me!
He shouted. Confused, the villagers looked at one another.
What was he talking about?
Then, in his final moments, Mazie Egbuna began to confess. He told the villagers everything, how he has gone to the medicine man, how he has cursed every young man who returned from the city, and how he has hidden the evil inside his walking stick. The curse has caused all the misfortunes in the village. As Mazie Egbuna spoke, the fire in Nneka's house burned brighter. The stick turned to ash, and with it, the curse was left. Mazie Egbuna's body became still, and he died right there on the floor of his hut. The villagers were shocked and angry at first, but as they looked around at the young men who had suffered under the curse, they realized that peace had finally returned. The evil that has plagued their village was gone, and the young men were free to rebuild their lives. Chike, along with other victims of the curse, slowly regained their fortunes. Businesses began to thrive again, and the village was filled with joy and laughter once more. The gossip that had filled the air so long was replaced with story of how the village has overcome evil of Mazie Egbuna. As for Nneka, she was celebrated for her unknown bravery without even realizing it. She has brought an end to the curse that has ruined so many lives. The village elders praised her kindness, and many said that it was her pure heart that has saved them all. Mazie Egbuna, the bitter old man with the crooked leg, was buried quietly in the village. His story became a warning to all who had heard it, a tale of greed, hatred, and the consequences of seeking the power through evil means. And so, the village returned to its peaceful way, with the young men traveling back and forth from the city without fear. Love and happiness filled the air once more, and the memory of Mazie Egbuna's cross slowly faded into the past. But the villagers never forget the lesson they have learnt, that greed and bitterness can destroy even the strongest hearts, and that true happiness comes from love, kindness, and a community united in peace. The end.